right. So I'm getting a little later start today, but that's okay. Today I'm going to do Matthew chapter 11. And then, H. Koenig is doing the Old Testament, and when he misses a day, he catches up. He doubles up. I'm not doing that because it would be way too long. So I'm just going to go ahead and start from Matthew chapter 11. And I don't want to do it because I have to. I want to do it because I want to. There's a difference. Meaning, I guess in a sense that, if it feels like a chore, I don't want to have to do it. So here we go. Matthew chapter 11, in praise of John the Baptist. When Jesus had finished giving orders to his 12 disciples, he moved on from there to teach and preach in their towns. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent a message by his disciples and asked him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" And so this is John having a crisis of faith. It started off where he clearly recognized him and knew who he was and had that big experience. But now here he's in prison. Things are going kind of poorly for him, and he's just having doubts. He's questioning what's going on. And this is a very common, when things don't go your way, it's easy to say, well, am I wrong? This shouldn't be happening, and what's going on here? Did I make a bad decision? So this is what we're seeing happen with John the Baptist. Verse 4, Jesus replied to them, "Go and report to John what you see and hear. The blind see, the lame walk, those with skin diseases are healed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor are told the good news. And if anyone is not offended because of me, he is blessed." And so this is, he's telling people, look, all those things that were predicted in the past, this is what's happening now. So you're not wrong, And that's why he's answering him that way. He's not saying yes, but he's giving the evidence, because the reality is words don't mean much. It's what happens. That's what means something. It's the actions. And so that's what Jesus is saying. Look, this is what's happening. I could tell you that I am, but then why would you believe? If you're not going to believe anyway, you're not going to believe just because I tell you. So it's not just that I'm telling you, these things are actually happening. So what do you think? Look at the actions, look at what's happening. That's your answer. But this verse right here, and if anyone's not offended because of me, he is blessed. It's still relevant today. Because people find offense at Jesus. People will say, oh, he was a great teacher. But if you read through what he said, people who have not read the Bible will say he was just a great teacher. If you've read the Bible, he makes pretty controversial statements. And so he wasn't just a great teacher. Was he a great teacher? Yes. But if you reduce him to just that, it's just you don't know him. So, and if anyone's not offended because of me, he is blessed. And that's true today too. Because people do still find offense. As these men went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out in the wilderness to see? A reed swaying in the wind? And then what did you go out to see? What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothes? Look, those who wear soft clothes are in kings' palaces. But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and far more than a prophet. This is the one it is written about." So what did you go out to see in the wilderness? Well, they went out in the wilderness to see John, right? And so he was a prophet. He was not living large. He was there speaking the truth. It's a contrast, not looking in the king's palaces. And really, the wealthy, they ended up setting themselves against Jesus, and he's kind of making a little bit of that distinction here too, right? Like John was a prophet. He didn't have money. He but that's not what you went out to see. You went out to see a prophet, not something good looking. This is the one, verse 10, it is written about. Look, I am sending my messenger ahead of you. He will prepare your way before you. I assure you, among those born of women, no one greater than John the Baptist has appeared, but the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been suffering violence, and the violent have been seizing it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. If you're willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who is to come. Anyone who has ears should listen. So the Elijah who is to come, that was prophesied in the Old Testament, and that's what Jesus is saying. And it's funny because every time I read, you hear something else. But this sentence, for all, from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been suffering violence, and the violent have been seizing it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. So what he's saying here is John is the last prophet like that. Because he is the Elijah who is to come. So this is signaling, and just like he was answering John the Baptist's question about him, he's turning to the crowds and talking about John and saying, look, this is exactly what was prophesied. John was the one who led the way, and he led the way for me. And that's what the Old Testament prophecy said. Verse 16, to what should I compare this generation? It's like children sitting in the marketplaces who call out to each other, we played the flute for you, but you didn't dance. We sang a lament, but you didn't mourn. For John did not come eating and drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. So he's saying, we played the flute, but you didn't dance. We sang a lament, but you didn't mourn. So, whatever you do is not right. John didn't come eating or drinking, and they say he's a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. They say a glutton and a drunkard. They were determined to be unhappy or determined to reject it, regardless of what happened. You don't eat and drink, he is a demon. You do eat and drink, he's a glutton and drunkard. So there is no winning. And the problem is not what they were doing. The problem is the attitude that the people were coming at him with. And that's what he's talking to. And he's saying, yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. A tree is known by its fruit, right? Wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. And so the proof is in the pudding. It's in the actions. It's in the result of the thing. Verse 20, then he proceeded to denounce the towns where most of his miracles were done, because they did not repent. So he was doing miracles, why? Just to show off? Just to make himself look better? No. He was doing miracles to point people to the kingdom of heaven, to say, look, this is here. And to get their attention and say, this is the power of God. Now pay attention and listen carefully and get yourself straight. And they weren't doing that. So he said, woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the miracles that were done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented in sackcloth and ashes long ago. But I tell you, it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon on the day of judgment than for you. So why? Tyre and Sidon were foreign cities, whereas Bethsaida and Chorazin or however you want to say it, those were Jewish cities. So them being Israelites were supposed to know God. And basically what he's saying here is Tyre and Sidon did not have the teachings you had. They did not have the instruction on who God is that you have had. But yet, had we done these miracles there, they would have turned to us. But you're not turning. You know better, and you're not turning. So it's going to be better for them on the day of judgment than it will be for you. Because they don't know, but you do. And you still are rejecting it. Verse 23. And Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? You will go down to Hades. For if the miracles that were done in you had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until today. Well, what happened to Sodom? It was destroyed. But the miracles were not done in Sodom before it was destroyed. So he's saying if the miracles had been done, it would have remained until today. But we do these miracles for you, and what do? You turn your backs on it. You ignore it. You ridicule it. Okay, so you're going to go down to Hades. But I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom on the day of judgment than for you. So because they know and still reject, because they understand and still reject, it's going to be worse for them. Verse 25. Again, Jesus is controversial. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. Jesus was not simply a good teacher, and the only way you can say that is if you completely do not read and only go by what you've heard. If you read it, like this stuff, what he's saying here, this is not, this isn't the sweet, sugary, gentle Jesus, right? This is, he's saying, look, you are accountable. That's what he's saying. You are accountable. And honestly, everything that we've read up to this point, by and large, that's what Jesus is saying. You are accountable. You have no excuse. You are responsible for you. You're responsible for your attitudes. You're responsible for your motivations. You're responsible for what you do and why you do it. And if you don't take responsibility for that, if you try to pass the buck, then there are going to be serious questions. And that's really what it is. These people were not wanting to take him seriously, not wanting to be held accountable. And so when he went to them and tried to hold them accountable, gave them the option, this is your chance, guys. This is the chance. These are the miracles. You see them. This is your chance to turn and do the right thing. And when they said no, by their actions, by their choices, then he said, it'll be better, it'll be worse for you than all these other people who never had these miracles done for them. Because you have had it and you still rejected. Verse 25. At that time Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, because this was your good pleasure. All things have been entrusted to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son desires to reveal him. Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. All of you, take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. And so he's calling out again, right? Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take up my yoke and learn from me. What does that mean, take up my yoke? We're not a farming society, so we miss some of that. But a yoke, the yoke was the thing that the ox wore when they were drudging, they were making the trenches in the, I can't, my brain is stopping. But in the farmland, so that they could have the rows of whatever it is they were planting, they would have to dig out the earth to create the rows. And so the oxen would put on the yoke, whether it was a single or a double yoke, and pull, and it would dig the furrows in the ground. And so he's saying, do my work, right? Take up my yoke and learn from me. Take on this work that I'm doing, pick it up, and learn how to do it from me. Do my work that I'm doing and learn from me. because I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. Essentially, the work that Jesus calls us to do is easier than if we try and do things our own way. That it's a better option. And that's really all that they've been called. That was the point of the miracles. The point of the miracles was to bring them to this point. And so you see here, and I've just been saying Jesus was controversial and confrontational, and he was. But then you see right here in this little, these 3 verses right here, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. Then you see the why of it. Like, he's frustrated with them because they see this and they reject it anyway. But what he offers is peace and rest and joy and life. And he doesn't say all that right here, but it is said in other areas. And so he's trying to do a good thing for them. He's trying to do for them what is actually going to give them what they hunger and yearn for. And yet they're stubborn and hard-hearted, and they see but reject. And so you see his frustration with them above, and the source of his frustration, which is their behavior. But then here you see why it's a source of frustration. That really what he legitimately desires is to give them peace and to join together with them in doing the work that he has to do on this earth. So there it is. That's chapter 11 today, and then tomorrow, I may or may not be on tomorrow, actually, because I have something I'm supposed to go to for 3 hours tomorrow evening. I don't know if I'll be there that long. I don't know. We'll see, maybe. If I'm there that long, I probably will not do this. If I am not there that long, I will. So, but if I don't do this, if I'm not on tomorrow, then I should be on Thursday. So, thank you for joining me, and have a good evening.